Yeah, so my mom, she had told me from that moment that she would never support me and that I should not ask her for help if I ever do decide to, walk that path. So when I did become pregnant, she was just like, okay, like no excitement, in fact, she said, I feel sorry for your kids because you've denied them of a father.
Let's be honest, life would be a whole lot easier if it came with a checklist or my favorite, a spreadsheet. Do this by 25, achieve this by 40. But we all know life doesn't work that way. This is Unpopular Decisions, where we're having honest conversations about the courage it takes to stop following the script. I'm your host, Jamila Calhoun. Today's conversation is about choosing motherhood without waiting for permission, the right timing, or even the right partner to arrive first. I'm joined by Connie Rutherford, the author of Searching for Tadpoles, a deeply honest memoir about her journey to becoming a single mother by choice. If you're someone who's questioning, am I being too selfish or am I running out of time? This episode is for you. Connie's story sits at the intersection of ambition, biology, identity, and courage. Let's get into it. Well, welcome in, Connie. I'm so excited for you to be on Unpopular Decisions. Just already been so inspired by your story and your book, Searching for Tadpoles. So, really grateful that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me, Jamila.
Absolutely. Well, before we dive into it, I'd love to have you introduce yourself and your unpopular decision to the audience.
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Connie Rutherford, and my unpopular decision is that I decided in 2020, at the age of 41, to become a single mother by choice.
Wow, that's so powerful. One, because 2020, like we know that that timing was really, really kind of dramatic. So much change happening in society. Even though I feel like we all tried to forget COVID even existed, but
Right.
it was a really challenging and scary time. So going through this journey with that particular timeline, I'm sure had quite a bit of impact on you.
Yes,
Um,
it did. It was definitely like an uphill battle.
exactly, exactly. Well, one of the elements, of course, we said this is an unpopular decision. So would love to hear from your perspective, what made you feel like it was unpopular at the time that you were doing it? Like, was it particular people you were afraid of being judged by or disappointing?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I think just the traditional values of society, like there's a natural trajectory, right? I mean, it's like you go to high school, then go to college, and then hopefully either you go to work or you find someone, you get married, and then you have kids, and then it's like the whole, you know, um, meeting your prince, and you have the 2.5 kids and a white fence and a dog, right? Like that's just what's known. But yeah, like I don't think that this is like a really popular decision. It's becoming more mainstream, but when you talk about who or there are people that I was afraid of offending or letting down, and definitely the first two people in mind, my parents. They're very, they're extremely traditional. And so I knew my dad is he's black, he's military, and he's a devout Catholic. So all those things together, like it means traditions, right? And
Yikes.
not to just have a kid by myself, right? It's meeting that person, getting married, and then having kids. And my mom is from Taiwan, and so she's also very traditional. In fact, their beliefs are more just like fate, and it's either fate that you meet someone and you get married and you have kids, or maybe their fate is that you don't meet anyone and it's okay. You're just happy, you're just happy to be happy. So,
Right.
yeah, neither one were actually happy when I told them that I was pregnant.
Yeah, wow. I mean, to your point, the choice around family formation is both personal it's your immediate family, but it's also society at large. And so,
Yes.
like, really managing all of those lenses and kind of those different sets of eyes on you throughout making this decision must have been incredibly difficult. To your point, as much as we like to say there's a lot of change in society, people are becoming a lot more open to different types of families. I think there was a recent study in 2021 that still showed that almost 50% of Americans still feel like a single mother raising children is not good for society. And
Mhm.
that is incredibly difficult because at the same time we know that the number of single mother households is growing considerably. Was there anything in terms of particular reactions or even articles that you read at the time that just like really stuck with you, like, oh no, I'm doing something that's gonna really put me on the outside of the expectations of society?
Well, no, I didn't really read anything per se, but, I was on Wall Street, so I was concerned about the stigma. Like, I worked a lot of hours, and I was just thinking, "Well, I don't want this to be a quote unquote crutch," right? Like, I need special accommodations because I am a single, if I decide to go down this road, I am a single mom. So I live in New Jersey. Obviously, I commute to Manhattan, and it's like, how am I gonna do this? And then, like, again, how am I gonna balance and what are they gonna think of me, right? It's that stigma, like, "Oh, did she just get knocked up?" And it's okay if you do get knocked up. I was trying for the longest to just get knocked up, but
Would be a little bit cheaper, right?
right, it would've been a much cheaper way, yeah, so but just to that stigma because obviously, as we know, being in a predominantly white environment, and being a woman and then a woman of color, it's like I have to prove my worth more so, right? I have to work,
Yeah.
you know, like 200%, I have to put in 200% instead of just 100%, right? So adding that on, I just wasn't really sure, but I have to at the end of the day, you always have to think about your own happiness and what is it that you really truly want to pursue.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, the workplace still isn't really fully accommodating to mothers in general,
Right.
let alone, someone who's a single mother and potentially is a single mother by choice. So it makes sense that that was in the back of your head and that you were nervous about that.
Mhm.
Um, you also mentioned your family as well being a part of some of the initial challenge in feeling that this choice would be accepted. There's a story you told that, at least to me, felt all too familiar. It's a story in your book about your mom finding your diary
Yes.
once when you were young.
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you tell us that story? And again, I say it's familiar because I literally feel like I had this scene
That same
happen in my
experience?
own
Yeah.
life with
Right,
my
right,
nosy
right.
mom.
Right, right. From that time in 16, like, I've always wanted to be a mom. Like, I had friends that would think about, like, getting married, and they would say, "Oh, I already know I want my colors to be pink and silver, and I want this type of ring and all this," and I'm just doodling baby names, like, what name would I like?" And, yeah, so that's probably what she read, and she kinda thought, like, "Is she having sex? Is she pregnant?" So
Exactly, and I feel like at the time, it sounded like she had a pretty strong reaction to the idea of, like, you potentially being pregnant and that
oh,
not being
yes.
allowed in
Oh,
in
yes, it
the
was not
household.
allowed. No,
Yeah.
both of my parents said that if I did become pregnant, that I would be kicked out, and I believe them. I mean,
Wow.
now as a parent, I wonder if they really would. I doubt it. You never know. But
Yeah.
so that was because I believed it, I was always so scared and fearful of the consequences.
Yeah, no, and again, it just really highlights how incredibly brave and transformative your ultimate decision is to become a single mother by choice, coming from the fact that growing up with this fear of getting pregnant and being that person who might be not a good girl according to your
Ex
parents,
Right.
to now really making that choice to step into your own truth. So I think that story just struck me for just how much growth you probably
Yes.
had to experience in order to go from there. to
Yes.
where you ultimately ended up.
And then at some point, I think that, as adults, we're always going to be our parents' kids, right? But I think that we have to also own our happiness and just know that we have to live with our own choices, right? So, like for me, just thinking, I mean, I always wanted to be a mom, right? Like at age 16. And if I didn't do this, it would be like a huge regret of mine. And like my parents don't have to live with this regret. I would, and I would hold on to this for the rest of my life if I didn't
Yeah.
pursue it.
Yeah, and I think about one of the reasons that I even was inspired to do this podcast really came from a quote I heard from Abbott Elementary, where Mr. Johnson says, "I'd rather live with consequences than live with regret." And I think it speaks exactly
Perfect.
to what you're talking about, Connie. Like, I remember when I had a moment where I was on the brink of trying to make a big decision, and I started to completely reframe, like, what would I regret, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, versus like, here's the pros and the cons list. It's a very different
Right.
way of like clarifying what's important to you. And so I love that you kind of had that distillation of like, I know I want to be a mother, and this is something that would carry with me as a regret, no matter what. That really helps to just provide that conviction.
Right. And I just love that. That is, I might need to print that out to remind
Shout out
myself, right?
to Quinta
Right.
and Abbott
Exactly.
Elementary. Love that
Right.
show.
Right.
Um, another aspect of this though that's so interesting is it's called single mother by choice. But what I've read and all the stats show, can most women in that situation ultimately would have preferred to parent with a partner. But the aspect of timing, biology really playing a role in how women think about this path, and the timing of it. So I'd be curious for, dating. What was dating like for you before your daughters were born?
Oh, New York is just fun. Let's just put it that way. But I will say that when I first moved up here, because I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for like 7 years after college, and I had a boyfriend, and the plan was I move here first, and then he was going to move. But the weekend that I was moving up here, I found out that he was cheating on me, and I was devastated. So
Oh my
I
god.
it was horrible. I was like, "Oh my gosh." Anyhow, we broke up, but that was just very difficult for me, and I felt like it just destroyed me in a way where and I'm never gonna allow someone to have that much power again, but I was really trying to pick up the pieces and figure out who I was. Here I am in a new city with a new job, and, I'm just trying to figure it out. So, of course, what do you do in New York? You just have fun, right? And you date a lot. So in the very beginning, I met like really good guys um, that wanted to get serious.
Mm,
And yeah, and I would be the runaway bride. Like I would run away from everyone that wanted to get serious because I knew that I'm broken. If I'm broken, there's no way that I can make myself happy, which in relation, enhance your happiness, right?
right.
So I just stayed single. And I worked on myself throughout this time.
Well, first of all, I mean, it's absolutely devastating what you went through, and there is so much about what we go through in our early 20s that we do have to take the time to heal, and it's important to give ourselves the grace and the space to take that time back to do the work, because so many times there's that pressure to just rush through the healing in order to maybe avoid being single later into life, but it's important, especially if you want to end up in a healthy relationship. So,
Right.
I think it's wonderful that you did take that space, and dating is definitely not easy, but maybe we could do a quick little game that will hopefully continue to help us get to know you, and hopefully will be easier decisions than the dating game.
Right, right, right.
So this is Would You Rather, and we're just gonna like play a little game. We won't go too spicy, but it'll be a great way for us to continue to get to know you and get to know what it means to be a solo parent by choice.
Okay, I'm
Um,
ready.
awesome, awesome. Okay, so first one, would you rather random aunties or friends set you up on a date
Mm.
or have them take the kids and babysit for a night?
Oh, no, definitely the latter. Definitely the latter. Anyone that wants to take the kids for a little time, so I have some alone time, definitely come. Call me.
I love it. I love it.
Please take the kids, please.
Yes. Well, hopefully they might do both, take the kids and set you up on a date, maybe.
Yeah, no, let me just see who they have in mind,
Okay.
first,
Okay.
okay? Right,
Fair.
right.
So
Let's
not
vet them
into the
first.
blind dates. I
I know.
see. I love it. I love it. Okay. So would you rather parent solo or co-parent with one of your past partners?
Oh, definitely solo. Definitely solo. Now, and I always preach, like, to my cousins, my younger cousins, like, it is very important who you choose as your partner. I mean,
Yes.
they can either make or break the relationship, and I think when you have a child that you're responsible for, everyone has their own way of thinking, their own way of upbringing, child rearing. There's a lot at stake, and those relationships that were in the past are in the past for a reason, and that's where they should stay. I would hate
Oh, yes. Like that's
Right. I think I'd prefer if it were, like, I'd rather maybe with a stranger that we will not have any connection to, but then that's basically what I did, right? Yeah, I think about it and just think that it's already difficult what I'm doing now, and to add any type of emotional baggage or anything stressful that's external, it'd make it even more difficult. Like, I can't even imagine the stress.
100%. And like just like they say, rejection is redirection.
Exactly, and I have to admit that, like, sometimes I do kind of think about the past, and, like, I'll talk to, like, one of my best friends and, we'll say something, and she's always like, "Yeah, but it didn't work out for a reason. It did not work out for a reason, so, yeah, it might have been nice for a little bit of time, but then ultimately it would still, end." And I think that's the beauty of also having a true friend that's not afraid to tell you the truth, because you know that it stems from love. But this particular friend, when I was trying to figure it out, because after like the 150th failed relationship up here, she and we took a trip to Grenada, and she's the one that I would always call and cry, because either my heart was broken, or I would realize, whoa, I really am single. What am I gonna do? And so anyhow, we're in Grenada, and she was just saying the way that I was approaching dating was also very unhealthy, because, like, on the first date, I would ask the guy, "Hey, so do you want kids?" And it's like, it's the first date, Connie. Like, you don't ask anyone that on the first date. But my mindset was like, time is ticking. I need to make moves, like, I need to know that we are aligned so we can just move forward, and she's like, "But
Yeah.
that's not the type of relationship that you want." You, like you said, Jamila, you want a healthy relationship. That's not healthy. So,
Right.
anyhow, she is the one that, like, she said, "If you want a baby, have your baby. Like, you don't need to do it like a traditional way. Just go have your baby." So
Wow. I love that. I love that. Let's, yeah, maybe dive back into your decision and the process you were going through to really make a choice of what to do. You mentioned that this was around when you were 41,
Mhm.
and I thought it was just super interesting some of the statistics around motherhood becoming very much something that is more accessible to older moms. The births to women age 40 and older has basically quadrupled, over the last kind of 25 years or so. Um, Births to women 35 to 39 has doubled and is now like 17% of all the births. So I think this is definitely something that is becoming a lot more common and accepted. But, was there a moment as far as timing was concerned and the biology where you said, okay, this is now impossible to ignore, the urgency is here, and I need to really start thinking about the path of doing this on my own. Clearly, there was some inspiration from this friend, but
Yes.
I know that there is like sometimes this moment of a doctor's appointment, something that you read that you're like, okay, I got to pull the trigger sooner than later.
Well, for me, my dad had prostate cancer and it was pretty aggressive, stage 4. And the reality of there's a possibility that my unborn child would never meet their grandparent. That was like a reality. And it was by my choice per se, right? I mean, obviously I had met the person, but yeah, that was like the first, aha, like, "Oh my gosh, like, I really need to think about this," because again, as an only child, I it's really important to me to continue the legacy, but in order to continue the legacy needs to kind know where they came from. So,
Right.
that is like the first part. And then, again, like, okay, like trying to get serious and, be more diligent on, you know, dating and the prospects. Then, like my friend, having that conversation in Grenada. So that is like basically the two go hand in hand, and it just propelled me to move forward. Obviously, I also did more because I did freeze my eggs at age 38. So before, all of this. And, that to me that was my insurance policy. I felt like, okay, that bought me some more time, even though I did it later in life at age 38. But by 40, I was like, okay, AMH levels were going down. And those AMH just really talks about, like, it shows you the number for your egg reserves, but it doesn't really tell you the quality of your eggs. So you have no idea, like, what state they're in. So I was like, okay, well, with all these factors, it's just, it's time. It's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course, illness could be such a moment of giving you like that clarity
30.
and understanding the importance of, we only have one life to live. I'm glad that for the book, your dad recovered from
Yes.
that
Yes. Thank
um,
you.
uh, illness and the cancer. So really, really grateful he's still with us and
Thank you. I
able to
appreciate that.
be grandfather to your
Oh,
daughters.
yeah, definitely a huge part of their lives. Yes. Yes.
That's incredible. You talk a lot about empowering women with information in your book, and it's great how much detail you provide about the process. So just now, you touched on your AMH levels, which can be measured through fertility testing.
Mhm.
And you also mentioned kind of freezing your eggs at 38, which I think, for a lot of people, they may fear that it's too late to even
Mhm.
consider doing an egg freezing round. What were some of the kind of surprising elements of the actual kind of fertility process from an information perspective that you wish you had known and that you feel is really important for women who may be listening?
So, you know, I feel like, you know how they say, like, on the job training? It was like on the experience training, or on the journey training, I don't know, but I was learning as I walked, the journey. So even with the egg freezing, like I mentioned in the book, that I didn't even know that the egg freezing process is just like it is IVF. It's just at the end they don't fertilize the egg. I had no idea. So I didn't know that I was going to be giving shots to myself. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know anything. And so that's why I felt the importance of documenting my experience, just to give women a little footprint or a blueprint of what may potentially they may encounter. Obviously, especially with fertility, it's very uh, unique and individualized. So, you may not go through the process like I did, but at least you have an idea of maybe what to expect. So, if a doctor is talking about something, then you'll be like, oh, yeah, okay, I do know what that is. And okay, kind of makes sense. So that was the entire, reason of why I wrote the book and tried to be as detailed as possible with the medical procedures.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about the different types of donors you could
Yes.
have, the
Yes.
different processes, IUI versus
Right.
IVF.
IVF. Yep.
I think one aspect as well that a lot of people may not appreciate is that oftentimes it takes more than one try to
Yes.
ultimately have a successful conception and then a successful pregnancy at that. Um, yeah, I'd be curious about your journey. And was there ever a moment where you thought this is too much? Like when you were on that second or third try, even where you thought maybe I might not do it.
No, I never had that thought.
Mm,
I'm very type A, and so I was gonna get it done, just to know
love
how
it.
long it was gonna take. But that is like the $1,000,000 question, right? When I was purchasing the vials, I didn't know how many I should purchase. And, in my family, to my knowledge, there aren't any fertility issues. In fact, I think that's why my parents said, "Do not have kids," like, like, while you're in high school, because it was so easy for us to have kids, you know? So
Yeah.
to me, I'm thinking like, "Oh, now that I'm ready, it should be easy. I should be able to pop one out real quickly," right? And no, that is not the case, which is why they say that it's a miracle when you are like, get pregnant, because it's like all the stars have to align in order for it to happen. And like each time that it failed, I was just thinking like, what can we tweak for the next cycle? But it is extremely taxing on the body, on your emotions. And I think that for me, when I did the last round where I did end up pregnant, I was starting to believe that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant. So I hadn't gotten to that thought of like, "Okay, I'm gonna stop." It would be, "Okay, let me explore other options." But I hadn't gotten there yet, because I was like, "Okay, let me just." I mean, I'm starting to lose faith, and, I'm gonna go through this. But at that time, when that last cycle, I was just going through the motions. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the emotional journey ups and down were just so clear in your book. How many tries was it? Just, for clarity for our listeners.
Sure. So I did one IUI with a partner. Then I did three IUIs with the donor sperm. Then after that, I did a hybrid IVF. So that meant we took some of my frozen eggs, thawed them, and then I tried to do an IVF, like an IVF cycle. Unfortunately, with that cycle, my body did not respond to the IVF
Mm.
medication, so we had to go ahead and nix that, and we continued with the thawing of the eggs and fertilizing those. um, we transferred one, but it didn't take. And so then after that, at age 40, we did a fresh IVF cycle, and luckily my body responded. And that is how I became pregnant. But I will say
Wow.
that this last cycle was very different, because the first time when they transferred, an embryo, I did something called PGS, which is pre-implantation genetic screening. And I just want to put it out there with a disclaimer. I believe it, and I'm not saying don't do it, but when the first time when they thawed my eggs and then fertilized in what became embryos, I had 5 embryos. And when I did the screening, I was thinking just the math. I was like, well, at least 1 will be normal. Well, 4 came back abnormal, and then 1 was inconclusive. And the one that I asked to transfer was the inconclusive one, because normally a doctor, when they see that their other, your embryo is abnormal, they will not transfer it. So I was devastated. And that night I was crying and bawling. And through my tears, I stumbled across an article on my iPad where it was talking about these doctors in New York City, where they were saying that, again, these tests are not 100%. And that the testing that takes place on these embryos, like, it's like 3 to 5 days, right? So if you give them more time, they may self-correct, because like when you're abnormal, it might be you have too many or too less chromosomes. But, again, that's just a window of 3 to 5 days. So maybe if you give it longer, it might self-correct. And so the second time when I did the fresh IVF, I declined the PGS and I said, I want the embryologist to do it old school. So, old school meaning look in the microscope, use morphology, which is just looking at the cells, looking at the cell structure, look at the symmetry, and rank them in order. And that's what they did. I had 5 embryos again, and they ranked them. And then at this time, the doctor was like, well, you've been doing this for a while now. It takes a lot of emotional energy and finances. Do you want to transfer too? So
Wow.
that's what we did. Yeah.
Wow. Well, again, it touches on the importance of empowering yourself with information.
Yes.
And it sounds like how coming across that article really gave you a new perspective.
The way the article was, well, the way that it panned out, there there may be a lot of embryos being discarded. And let me just tell you firsthand experience how difficult it is to create an embryo. So
Mhm.
just to think that all my hard work is just thrown away just like that, when it takes so long, so much energy, so much of my finances to get them. And then it's like, oh, just because they test and it's abnormal, again, they may be abnormal for a reason. But again, there are tests that you can take, when you're actually pregnant, like amnio, if you want, if you're concerned. So there are tests that you can do later. But I mean, I'm just like, it's hard work and it's just being discarded just like that. And it's pretty devastating.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, nothing's guaranteed, as you said,
Exactly.
throughout the entire process. And so picking those moments of when to, take the bigger risk versus to be conservative. It feels like there's so many different decisions that you had to make. And that also in and of itself is its own toll because you feel like
Mhm.
it's all on you to make
It
each
is,
one of these
yes.
choices.
Yes.
I can't point to anyone else.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, it's all me.
yeah,
I have to
yeah.
be responsible for my choices.
Yeah. Well, you touched on the financial aspect, and I know that this is a huge component of women's considerations when they're thinking about potentially this might be their path. Yeah, I just want to hear from you about the path that you took to financially preparing for going down the path of becoming a single mother by choice. And let's first focus on the cost itself of becoming pregnant. And of course, there's the cost of raising two
Right,
beautiful
right,
girls,
right,
right?
right. Yes,
But
yes.
yeah, how did you go about financially preparing or at least assessing just how much this might cost.
Right. Well, insurance, I mean, it doesn't cover really anything, like, especially with the egg freezing. So I remember at that time when I was freezing my eggs, I first started at this prestigious clinic and in Manhattan, and they were charging $10,000 per cycle. Now, the cycle, meaning if they only get 1 egg or no eggs or 15 eggs, that's it. And that didn't include medication or storage for that matter. So if you wanted to do it again, that's another 10,000. Uh, so I had saved my money, so I had savings for that, but I was just like, "You know what? Let me do a little bit more research and let me see." Now, obviously, you want to make sure you still have quality in your healthcare, right? Um, but I went ahead and I found this startup where, they were offering like a little promotion. It was either, you get up to 4 cycles, or 12 eggs, whichever comes first. And I was just thinking, "Oh, okay," that kinda hedges everything a little bit. And, but like I said, you don't want to you wanna make sure the quality is there. So I went back to the prestigious, clinic, and I asked my doctor, "What makes them different from this particular clinic?" And I'm so glad she was very honest with me, and she said, "Nothing. Those doctors came from here." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm out."
It's
Yeah,
clear.
it's clear. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely, um, like I said, I had savings and I used my savings for it. And then obviously, trying to become pregnant, that was again, the IVF. I did use insurance and there were so many nuances with that as well that I illustrate in the book, which I feel like with insurance you need to have that's a degree within itself. Like you need to take a class and a course just to understand how everything works with insurance.
Right.
But I did have an advocate there, and she helped me
Good.
immensely. So again, for me, I know don't don't ever be afraid of asking questions. Don't ever be just because like they say, old school, closed mouths don't get fed. And you don't know, and it's not ever a dumb question because if you don't ask it, I mean, there could be a possibility of a solution or an alternative, right? But you
Right.
won't know unless you ask.
Oh, that's so true. And one, I'm thinking, drop the course link.
No.
Connie, you figured it
Oh, no.
out. And
No, I did not figure it out, but I had so many conversations and asking questions. Like I said, even asking, I felt embarrassed asking her because,
Mm,
this is like a prestigious clinic. And I'm like, I thought she was going to go into like, well, we do a lot of research and blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, I don't know. Am I even worthy to ask that question? Obviously, they have the name, right? But it's my money. It's my money. And I deserve to ask what makes them do. I want to know, why should I come to you guys instead of going to them,
right.
And we should never be afraid to ask those questions because it is your body and it is your resources.
Right.
So
Right. Well, again, talking about the somewhat the financial piece, but I could imagine the moment you actually found out that the two implanted embryos were healthy and that you were pregnant with twins was probably a little bit shocking. Tell me about those emotions that came up
So,
when
yeah.
that happened.
Yes, well, it was funny because when the doctor approached me about implanting too, I don't know if you ever go through your
Mm,
fertility journey, the fertility doctor, are all about stats, and those stats at the end, when they go through the statistics, at the end, you're kinda like, "Why am I even doing this?" Because it is very kinda, like, negative, So when he was telling me, oh, well, his thought process about the 2, he was like, "Well, we've been doing this, and, the likelihood of both, taking, is, like, less than 1%. And then, all we really want is just 1, but then that's, like the percentage of that is, like, maybe less than 5%, and da, da, da." So you're like, "So then why are we doing this?"
right.
But what I loved about him is that he always ended on a positive note and he would say, but it only takes one. So, um, we went ahead, we implanted two. And like I said earlier, at this time, I'm just not believing that I'm going to get pregnant. I'm just like, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. I'm already thinking about what we're going to tweak next, the next cycle. What are we going to do? And, so well, I started spotting, so I really did not think that I was pregnant. In fact, I was supposed to go in to get the blood work to see if I was pregnant, and I called the clinic and was like, "Hey, I'm spotting, so I really don't wanna come in to get the test, like, I'm not pregnant." And, the director of clinical operations was like, I get what you're saying, but you know what? Let's just have you come in for a data gathering, you know? And I was like, that's the magic word because we need to know what to tweak next month, right? And so I was so irritated going in. I was like, I was
Yeah.
cursing the whole way, came home. I was so irritated. I went for a run and then I came back, took a shower, and then the phone rang. And that's when the director called and was like, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. And I was just like, first, it was like a relief, like, "Whoa, I can get pregnant," right? And then I was like, "Oh," then it's the joy, it moved on to joy, and then she was like, "Well, your HCG levels are so high that there's a possibility that they're twins." And I was like, "Oh, no, like, WTF?" Like,
Oops.
oh, wait, the doctor said less than 1%. Like, how did this happen? You know? Because again, financially, I'm just thinking about one child. One child was already going to be a lot, right? So I'm thinking, how in tarnation am I going to support two kids? Like, really, I'm not there. So what do I do? And it definitely transformed into like anxiety of like, what do I need to do to prepare for two kids? So
Right.
and I'm still going through it. The financial anxiety of like, "Oh my gosh, okay, how am I gonna do this?" How you know, just everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely, the a range of emotions from, again, the relief to joy to then anxiety of like, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Oh my goodness. Well, I can't even imagine. But I'm sure just about any parent of multiples kind of has that moment of,
Right, right. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
there aren't as many economies of scale when it comes to having multiples. Like you
Yes.
think it would scale easily, but my sisters are twins,
Oh, yes.
and I they're much younger than me, so I saw them what coming up, and yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
literally just double of
Double,
everything,
double of
like
everything. Yeah, yeah. Now I just
um,
ask, "Do you have, like, a twin discount or, like, a
yeah.
multiple discount?" Like, anything.
Exactly. You've of course alluded to the fact now that as part of your village, your parents did eventually come around and were a part of supporting you. In the end, could you talk about like that transition from their initial reactions to maybe some of those key moments where you started to see them changing their perspective?
Yeah, so my mom, she well, I had kind of broached the subject way before I actually did it, and she had told me from that moment that she would never support me and that I should not ask her for help if I ever do decide to, walk that path. So when I did become pregnant, she was just like, "Okay." Like, no excitement, no in fact, she said, "I feel sorry for your kids because you've denied them of a father." That's what she
Wow.
said to me. I was like, "Oh,
Wow.
well, families come in different shapes and sizes and, ways, but, all I can do is, know that I will do my best." Um,
Right.
and then my dad, obviously, like I said, didn't wanna know anything, so I would talk to him on the phone, and I would say, "Hey, I just had a doctor's appointment," and he would say, "So how's the weather out there?" And I'm like, "Okay, alright, I guess you don't wanna know anything about these kids." Um, Now, I decided when I was about, like, I think 4 or 5 months pregnant, to go to Taiwan, and, my mom goes back and forth, and so she was in Taiwan at the time, and, I guess when she saw me pregnant, it just changed everything, and, she took back everything she said. I mean, didn't say it like that, obviously, because how can she? But she did ask me if I wanted her to come, and be with me, and, did I want her to come and help, before the girls came. So she came 3 months before and stayed 3 months after to help.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, my dad, it wasn't until it was June when they were born, so it was around Father's Day, and I didn't have time to buy a gift. I only was able to get a card that was like, "Happy Father's Day," and then I mentioned him being a grandfather. And so I called him on Father's Day and just said, "Hey, sorry, no gift, but, I got you the card." And he was like, It's okay." He was like, "You've already given me the best gift." So from then,
Oh,
he was on board. Yeah.
wow. Wow. Well, I mean, it does go to show like ultimately uh this is such a deeply human experience.
Yes.
And in the face of, new life being brought into the world, it's hard to keep that icy exterior probably. So I'm so glad that they came around and that they actually gave you that, clear validation in
Yes.
the end.
Yes.
Because to your point, I think also sometimes parents can just like not acknowledge
Oh, yes,
that things have
absolutely, yeah.
changed or
Right,
something.
right, 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 right.
Yeah, yeah. But to hear those words must have meant so much.
Yes, I mean, I did cry.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
um, well, part of navigating that anxiety and part of the part that just really warmed my heart reading your book was so many moving stories of how your friends, you call them sisters,
Yes,
and even your coworkers, honestly. I know you mentioned the
yes,
anxiety you had about that initially. They really showed up for you in this process, from trying to conceive to your pregnancy to, of course, post your daughter's arriving. Did that surprise you? And were there moments that did feel lonely, even when you had people who were ready to step up and help you?
so I will say that I was not surprised. I think that, like, I call them my sisters, and they are, so I had no doubt they would have my back. I mean, it was funny because, it wasn't my baby. I mean, it became our babies, and, it was really beautiful to see. But did I get lonely? Absolutely, and I think that those moments come, like, at night when you're by yourself and you're in the dark and your mind and your thoughts are starting to just wander, and you're just like, "Oh my gosh," like, "How did I get here?" And is this the right thing to do? Well, it's a little too late, Connie. I mean, this is what's gonna happen. And, even while I was pregnant and I moved into my new home, I was telling one of them, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I mean, it's so quiet and it's a little scary to me, like, I can't believe I'm here by myself." And her response was, because she has a child, she was like, "You better enjoy this peace and quiet right now, because this is the last time you're gonna get it." And she is so right.
Right.
Right? So, but, yeah, I mean, just to be totally honest, yeah, there are moments and still are moments where I feel lonely,
Mhm.
even with kids.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know also, I have a Caribbean background as well, and um, you've mentioned your heritage, Taiwanese and Black, and I think there's often a challenge for the ways we were raised of being self-sufficient, versus
Yes.
coming into moments where we actually truly need to ask for help. Like there is no
Yes.
option; you must.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So talk about that, like either the first time you told a friend that you were going on this journey or the first time you had to ask them to really do something for you. Like, how did that feel to have to lean on other people?
Very difficult because, like you said, like, I I am one, I will figure it out myself, and I will do everything myself, which is probably why I have these kids by myself. But, what you realize is that when they say that it takes a village, it really does, because there's just no way that you can do it by yourself. And I think that when they were born and they were not sleeping, like, my dad told me in the very beginning, when before I had the kids, again, like I said, he was not supportive. He told me, he was like, "You're not gonna be able to do it." And I was like, "What do you mean? You raised me to be this very strong, independent woman, like, I don't understand." He was like, "Well, you love your sleep too much." And I was like, "Yes, I know, but, I know for the first 3 months, they probably won't sleep, so I figured I can do this for 3." Okay, 5.5 years later, I'm still not getting any sleep. So, it really is difficult, but when they were, like, infants, especially when I came back, from the hospital, it was very difficult because I would, like, wake up one. I didn't do the tandem feeding, so I would wake up one, I would breastfeed, and then burp, change diapers, put her to sleep, and then I would, go on to the next one and do the same thing all over. Then after that, I would pump one, pump the second one, second breast, and then after that, I would sleep for, like, 30 minutes, and I would get up to do it all over again. Well, as they got older, one baby A was just not a good sleeper, and she would wake up a lot, and I was so sleep deprived. I was extremely sleep deprived, and, like, I could feel, like, myself breaking, and, obviously, you don't condone, when you hear about mothers, what they do to their kids, but you can understand and have empathy of why they do it, because it is exhausting and you get to a place where you're like, "I just want them to stop crying," or I'm breaking. I am breaking down, and, but you try to push through, and then when I would see daylight, I'm like, "Okay, it's a new day, I can get through it." But there was one night I was like, "You know what? If I don't ask for help, like, I don't know what I'm capable of, right?" I mean, just to be
Wow.
very honest, because you're just there. So there was one night I was like, "Just send the text," and that's what I did. I sent the text, and then it was like, she rang the alarm, and
Yeah.
everybody came and was like, "Okay, here we are." And because it's COVID, like, I didn't really know, we didn't know much about the virus, so, you're trying to protect these 2 little babies, we're trying to protect yourself, so I didn't want people to be in my house because you didn't really know if they were social distancing
Right.
or anything. So it was difficult, but you definitely have to ask, and it was very difficult for me to, send the text, and
Yeah.
even sometime after that, it was very difficult, but I will say in the last probably year, I have perfected it. Now, I
Mm.
don't hesitate to ask now because I understand that friends truly want to help, but they don't know unless you say something, and you have to be very specific about what it is that you need help with. So,
Right. Right.
and it's okay. And it's okay to ask. It doesn't mean that you're any less, strong. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means that you know your limits and you know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so powerful and so important for, people stepping out into their own truth and knowing that's honestly part of the platform of these conversations that we're having to showcase, even though you're doing something that may seem unpopular, finding your tribe and then reaching out is really going to be so important to not feeling isolated and having that support to make it through. So I love that reminder. So
Yes.
you sent the SOS text. Like, what did they do? Did they got you a hotel room and
They
they
did,
like,
actually.
yeah,
So they came in and, at the time they were like, "You know what, Connie, you need to go get the vaccine." And um 2 of my friends that night kicked me out the house, and they got me a hotel, and, I was able to get some sleep, but it was so funny. I was like, "It's so ironic. These little kids, they try to act like I'm just lying," because that night, I was like, "Okay, so how did it go?" And they were like, "They slept the whole night." Like, "What do you?"
of
Said,
course.
Of course they did. Of course, right? But I'm like,
I love that.
it's right, but, but from then on, and like I said, just there were, like, moments like that where, like, even my cousin from Chicago, as they, gotten older, even my cousin, he'll say, like, "Okay, Connie, I'm gonna get you, a hotel. Please just go, have a night and just enjoy yourself, just to get some sleep." And I remember, I had a hard time last year in the beginning. I think that in our community, we don't talk about mental health enough, right? And a lot of times, they'll just say, people say, "Well, just pray about it," And yes, I do pray about it, but but sometimes we need more help than just praying about it. We need some professional help, some professional guidance, and then sometimes medication. And I was having a very, very difficult time, and I didn't ask for help. And my one really great college friend who lives in Virginia, she was like, she just felt it, and she was like, "Honey, I'm driving up. I'm about to take these girls, and you need to handle yourself." And she drove up 5 hours, got the kids, and drove back 5 hours, to
Wow.
Virginia. And then when it was time to return them, she drove back up 5 hours and went back. And I was just like, "Wow." And that allowed me time to really just take medication. It got to the point where, you know, I thought that panic attacks and anxiety attacks were like on TV. They're portrayed as I need to, breathe into a paper bag or what have you. But I was starting to get, my body was trying to tell me stuff. And I didn't really understand that, like my all of a sudden breaking out in cold sweats or feeling nauseous or feeling like I'm about to vomit was panic attacks. And I tried all the like, as I like to do research. So I did all the breathing techniques. I had like doing reflexology all over my body, like, okay, calm down, calm down. But no, I just, I needed medication and
Yeah.
I started medication.
Thank you so much for sharing that because, again, I do think part of this journey of, helping people understand what it means to be a single mother by choice is to also show it doesn't literally mean single. You have the village, you have
Yes.
your medical care, um, mental health care. These are all part of really the ecosystem you need to build around yourself. And so, so proud of you and so glad
Thank
you're
you.
you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Well, clearly this has been such a powerful journey for you. You've been incredibly thoughtful throughout all that research and problem solving. First of all, I'm like, I want to work on your team because clearly the way you go about things like
Anytime you have any questions, let me know.
but even with all of that kind of research and thoughtfulness, is there anything that you look back on and feel like you would do differently?
I would have asked for help earlier.
Mm,
Yeah. And maybe even have
yeah.
done the whole journey even earlier too, because I am tired. I think, I've always tried to before kids, I was I was a runner, I was a cyclist. I took care of myself physically and I tried to eat healthy. And so I just thought that I was good, right? This is like a whole nother type of exhaustion and fatigue. And so maybe if I was a little bit younger, maybe it would be a little bit easier. But yeah, so ask for help earlier and maybe I've done the whole thing a little earlier when I was a little younger. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that call out. I feel like people feel like they have to give it the good college try on finding a partner, and
Yeah.
you won't give yourself permission to go this path
Right.
until you hit a certain age, basically. So calling out, like, yeah, you can choose this at whatever age is right for you.
Exactly, because
Um,
it doesn't mean
yeah,
that you can't meet your partner, you still can, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Again, families come in different different ways.
yeah, yeah. Well, if I may ask, I'd be curious how you've experienced dating since having your daughters.
It's so funny because now I ask the opposite question, I'm like, I still ask, "Do you want kids?"
Want the other answer
It's like, I want the
now.
other answer now, like, because I'm not having anymore. So it's so
Right,
funny because now that I have kids, these men are looking for someone that wants to have kids, and I'm like, "Where were you years ago when I was looking for this?"
right,
It's so
right.
ironic, right? It's like, oh, the irony. But, yeah, but the blessing and the beauty is that now I really take my time. Like, I want a healthy reciprocal relationship, and I am not going to take anything less. So,
Yeah,
um, I I am very quick. to figure out like if this is going to work or if it's not, and I am quick to make decisions of like, you know what, we just need to go separate ways. And
Love
I
that.
love that about myself now, like the maturity and just to know, my worth and understand what it is that I'm seeking. Um so, it's a little different. I'm still dating, again, the things are just timing is everything, and finding the person who's at the place that you're at the same time. So it'll
Exactly.
happen.
Yes, no, I love that. And to your point, I love that there's growth after you've made a big decision like this. It impacts the way you move through the world on
Hmm.
all your decisions afterward. Like you
Right,
know who you are, you have that grounding, and so it really just helps you show up even more healthily and more fully yourself. So
right.
I love that that's now impacting your dating life
Yes, it
too.
has. Yes.
So, what would you say to someone who's listening and maybe feeling kind of maybe regret about their current situation? They're not partnered, they're, not sure about what's ahead and maybe feeling like it is a little too late. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say it's never too late to pursue your deepest desires, right? I think, we have examples of that. You look at Oprah Winfrey, Vera Wong. It's like if having a baby is something that you do want, obviously do your research, and make sure you are financially, mentally, physically prepared, and ready for that. Go for it. I would say, get your fertility checked. But, like I was just talking about how families come in different ways. There are many paths to motherhood, right? I mean, I
Right.
use donor sperm. There's also donor eggs, surrogacy, foster care, adoption, and you just have to realize that each one, it leads to the same profound destination, right? It's becoming a mother. And it doesn't make you any less because being a mom is being a mom. So I just want
Yeah.
people to know that there's just so many options. So it's not too late.
So maybe our last question, what would you want to say to the haters? The people who maybe judge becoming a single mother by choice without understanding the reality behind it.
The one thing that I would say is that, like sometimes you meet someone, like a mother who is married, but maybe their husband, is works a lot or works at night or what have you. And they're like, it's almost like, like I am a single mom. And it's like, no, you're not. You know, uh, you're not. You still have someone that you have to make a choice with. You can talk about, milestones or what you should do, regarding your child. No, you still have a partner. Like, so being a single mother by choice is truly being single. It's like I make all the decisions. And again, I'm responsible for the decisions I make. And it is just me. So you know, and if I wanna have fun, I gotta get a babysitter. There's nobody, like, that helps me, I don't have a partner that I can say, "You know what, babe, I just need a moment to myself, watch these kids. I need to go for a run, or I need to go" what no, that's not my narrative. So, um, I give all respect to, moms that are single, like, either by consequence or by choice. It is very, very difficult. So, you know
100%.
yeah.
No, well, thank you so much, Connie. You shared so much wonderful information. Your transparency, the heart and bravery you poured into this decision, but also into building the life that you really wanted, are just so inspiring. So, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jamila. I hope that, women that are listening will be inspired. And if you have any questions, I do have TikTok and Instagram. The handles for both are searching for tadpoles at searching for tadpoles. And then I also have my website, ConnieRutherford.com. So you can reach out if you have any questions. I'm here to support.
Amazing. And buy the book, y'all. Again, there's so much rich information in there about the process and just the incredible storytelling of Connie's journey. So,
Thank
yeah, I hope you
you.
guys will go out and buy it.
Thank you so much.
When it came to choosing to be a single mother by choice, Connie wasn't fearless. She was honest and learned what it really means when they say it takes a village. Remember, choosing differently doesn't mean you're doing life wrong. It means you're doing life authentically. Be sure to subscribe to Unpopular Decisions wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if this episode stuck with you, leave us a review or share it with someone who might get something from it. Because when one person chooses differently, it opens the door to a million more brave choices. Thanks so much for listening. I'm glad you're here.